The recipe today is for swirly sugar cookies. I saw these on Pinterest. I thought they were just super cute and looked pretty easy. The ingredients are simple, just 2 cups of flour, half a teaspoon baking powder, 12 tablespoons butter softened, 3/4 cup sugar, 1 teaspoon vanilla, 1 egg, and some red and green. I like to use the gel food coloring. I think it gives a better pigment. So that's all you really need for this recipe. To get started, you're going to combine your 2 dry ingredients together, which is your flour, 2 cups there, and your baking soda. Now the original recipe did call for salt, but I didn't have unsalted butter, so I'm not putting salt in lieu of using unsalted butter. Alternatively, you could use a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, which you would add here, and mix together with dry ingredients when you use unsalted butter. So I'm just going to give that a quick stir around with the whisk to combine it. And then we'll set that aside and get ready to put together our wet ingredients. First, we're going to add the 12 tablespoons of softened butter into our bowl. And just like any good cookie recipe, you're going to start by creaming the butter. And I know a lot of recipes say you can combine the butter and the sugar and then cream it, but I do like to get my butter in there and cream it up first, then add the sugar and do some more. So here I'm just getting started with that, and I had a little helper come in. She wants to join, so moving the camera for her to help. So I'm creaming the butter here maybe for just about a minute until it gets really nice and soft and whipped, and just scraping the bowl down here. And then adding in our 3/4 cup of granulated sugar. And now I'm going to go ahead and beat for about 2 minutes. This helps the sugar to start to almost dissolve in the butter a little bit, and it becomes nice and fluffy. The color of the butter will also pale a little bit as you whip it. Once you're done with this piece, we are going to add the rest of our wet ingredients, which are just 1 egg and then about a teaspoon of vanilla. I usually don't measure my vanilla, I just throw some in, so you'll see me just dump it. I'm actually right on the verge of making more of my homemade vanilla. This is the last bottle I have from last year. I made a nice big batch. I gave a whole bunch away for Christmas as gifts, and this is my last personal batch that I had left. Then we're going to combine our dry ingredients and our wet ingredients. And I do like to start with a spatula just because this recipe has a fairly dry dough and I don't want to whip the flour up into a dust storm in my kitchen. So I'm getting started here by just using my spoon and then adding the hand mixer piece here. And as you mix it, it will start to come together, but this dough again is very dry, so you're going to notice that it almost just looks like a bunch of sand as I'm stirring it here. And what you're going to do then is take off your beaters and then just use your hands to press it together. It'll press right together. There's lots of butter in there, so it'll form a nice dough ball for you. So use your hands. You don't want to take too long with this because you don't want your heat from your hands to melt into the butter, but just do it enough until you can get it combined into a ball. And then this recipe has a swirl to it. That's the design. That's what drew me to try this new recipe. So we're going to need to separate into 3 parts, one for each of the colors. We're going to leave one as white, and so we'll leave it plain, and then the other 2 will be red and green respectively. So what you want to do here is just split it up, leave one in the bowl, and we are going to start today by doing the red. So I'm just going to kind of squish it down again so it flattens out, and then getting my red gel food coloring. And I added some, and then you'll see I blended up, and then I decided to add a little more. I really wanted these colors to be very bright. So watch as I blend this together. It'll start to get more and more evenly dispersed, more and more red. But once it seems to be all the same color and it's not quite dark enough, that's when I chose to add a little more. So you see it's kind of almost like a pinky color here. Just a splash more was enough. We beat that together, and that came out nice and red for us. Once you're done with the red color, Then you want to scoop it all out. If you have any food coloring stuck in your bowl, make sure to get that out. You don't want it to get in your other color. But you're going to wrap it up in cellophane or plastic wrap, whatever you have, and then we're going to be putting it in the refrigerator. So you're going to flatten it out into a disc, nice and flat so it cools quickly, and then just wrap it up in that saran wrap. We're going to do the same with our second ball, and we're going to make green. So again, you're just flattening it out a little bit, and then I'm going to throw my green gel food coloring in. And go ahead and beat it together. This made a nice pretty green. It's even brighter than it looks on the camera. And again, we're going to grab some plastic wrap and we're going to wrap that up in a flattened disc to put in the refrigerator. And then same with the third. The third one we are going to leave white because that's what's going to help the colors separate and be a swirl. So here you see we've got our 3 discs. And we're going to refrigerate for an hour. We want this to firm up nice and firm because we're going to be rolling it out. Now I'm going to show you how I rolled out my red, but you want to do the same process with all 3 and leave them in the refrigerator until you're ready to work with them. So I just cut out parchment paper to about the size that I wanted my rectangle to be, and you want a long and kind of skinny rectangle because you're going to roll it up. And if you've ever done like a cinnamon roll or something like that, a sweet roll, it's the same process. You're rolling it into a rectangle, and in this case, you're going to layer the colors together and then roll it from the long side. So you want it to be longer than it is wide so that you can get several cookies out of it. So here you'll see I'm just sort of using that parchment paper size as a guide. I'm pressing the dough out and trying to get it as straight as I possibly can. If you get any crazy shapes, you'll notice I have a pizza cutter next to me so that you can kind of cut down the side and make them straight if you need to, and then throw the pieces in the middle that you cut off and press them back into shape. You want these to be fairly thin. You don't want them to be super thick because you're going to be rolling it, but you don't want them to be so thin that they break when you try to roll them. And you'll see here after I layer them together, I do roll it just a bit more. So here's my red, and then you'll get your others that you've rolled out back out of the fridge, and you'll be layering them on top. So here I'm taking my white. You want to put the white in between the 2 colors so that you get the best look. Line it up, and then peel off the parchment paper from the top. Do the same with the green. And then again, I wanted these to kind of stick together, and I also wanted it to be just a bit thinner so I could roll it easier. So you'll see here I'm just sort of stretching it down and up, not making it a lot wider, just down and up, trying to get that uniformity for when we roll it. So that size looks pretty good. It's almost the exact same size as that parchment paper, which is what I was hoping for. So we're just going to turn it on its long side and slowly peel it up and press it in so that we can start to roll it. And you want to make sure this is rolled as tightly as you can because you do want the cookies to be uniform. You don't want them to separate in between the dough of the colors anyway. So here you'll see I'm rolling it, just being very gentle, trying to keep your hands off of the dough as much as you can because your hand heat will start to melt some of the butter there. So again, we're just rolling it. And then once I got it all rolled together, you do want to try to push the seam in so that it is going to stick together well. So here I'm just pressing the seam a little bit. And then as with anything you roll, it seems to always be fatter in the middle. So I'm just giving it a little bit of a roll with my hands and pressing down and out as I pull my hands apart to even out the size. And that way each cookie will be about the same size around as well. Now, something that I didn't do here, which I wished I would have, is just put it back in the refrigerator in this log for about a half an hour so that it can firm up a little bit. What that would have done for me is help to maintain more of a circular shape. So see here when I'm cutting it, it's getting a little bit of a flat side because I'm pressing down with my bench scraper here as I'm cutting it. This ended up making about 20 cookies for me. I was cutting them about a half an inch or so wide. But I think if I made this recipe again, because of how much time it takes to roll everything out and the refrigeration time, I'd probably double it to make 4 dozen instead of 2 dozen, which was closer to what I got. And I'm just cutting off those ends that aren't so pretty or don't have all 3 colors on them. Those I'll bake up just as like the taste tester ones for us. But just putting them out on a sheet, about a dozen fit on each sheet, and I had 2 full sheets. And then we threw them in the oven at 350 for about 12 minutes. So this is before, and then here you'll see what they look like after. I think they really did puff up more into a circular shape, but you can see where they're a little bit oblong, so that's where I think if I refrigerated them, they would have been more circular. I thought this was a fun recipe to try. You could do any colors you like for any kind of themes, and so I hope you give it a try. Take care. Bye.